That alone, verse number 68. Like snake rope form, the I consciousness enters both knowledge and the body. On one occasion the understanding is true, on another untrue. Thus, one who can discern should understand. Commentary. This is a very crucial verse. It very correctly presents the kind of life most of us lead. In our life there is an ambivalent pull. At one moment we conform to the requirements of this world, identifying ourselves with our bodies, our bodily needs, and the world of necessity. In this world we look for pleasure and get more or less satisfaction. Then a shift comes and we swing to the other side. We start questioning the validity of whatever we were just conforming to. The body seems to be unreal, and our identity with it is now shifted to an identity with the unknown, the absolute, the ground, the incomprehensible. If we look at what we have been doing with our mind, it appears absolutely meaningless, a sheer waste of time. Then the only meaningful value seems to be to turn to that unknown secret beginning and try to understand it more. But you don't remain there long. You come back to the world of ordinary events and again join the fray. If we accept this as the common lot, then all are schizophrenics. There is not one person who is not split in this fashion. Schizophrenia is natural to all people. Here the Guru uses two special words. On one side he places ariva, pure knowledge, and on the other angi, the possessor of the body in its animated state. In between is ahanta, the I consciousness, which assumes two different dimensions. When it turns to the embodied state, it assumes a particular status, and when it turns to pure knowledge, it assumes a different dimension. To complete the picture, we have to think of two more factors. Mind relates the ego consciousness to the identity with the body, and intellect relates it to an identity with the Absolute. So we can say an individual is composed of body, mind, ego consciousness, intellect, and as a total ground, the unknown. This last is given many names, such as nothingness, beingness, existence, or transcendence. Call it whatever you like. All these names suit it very well. You should have a very clear picture of this scheme in your mind. You can approach this from either side, from the perspective of the body, which is the most visible, pronounced, tangible, and objective, or from the perspective of pure knowledge, which is sometimes symbolized as God. The argument for those who take the side of the body is, where is the individual without a body? This is very true. If there were no bodies, we couldn't distinguish one person from another. For there to be individual persons, they have to have separate bodies. It is irrefutable that we have bodily existence, but they are not just inert bodies, they are animated. The essential question is the mind coming from somewhere and animating the body, or is the body so structured that it produces this thing called mind within itself? Physiological psychology tries to prove that the organization of matter has built up everything necessary for the body to generate consciousness out of itself. From this viewpoint, the body is primary and the mind is secondary. It is not that the body is animated by the mind, but the body's animation is called mind. You can look into the whole setup, how physical and chemical operations create a system like this. What is called mind is nothing but a blanket phrase for various kinds of sensations. If you take away your eyes, you don't have any sight. If you take away your ears, you don't have any hearing. When you experience heat and cold, pain and pleasure, or when you experience a non-stop flow of all kinds of thoughts, muddled memories, and questions in a mad procession, you call it mind. Fine, you are now on the side of Angi. Anga means limb, Angi means that which has limbs, the limb owner. The limb owner with a mind has no motivation, no goal, but your life is purposive. You have goals and goal orientations. Your actions are all motivated by whom? For motivation there has to be a central agency called I. Again, is this I not the central focus of the mind? When the body perishes, what happens to the I? Even before it completely dies, if a person has a stroke and goes into a coma, there may be no I functioning, but the body continues to live even without the I. So it is not absolutely necessary to have an ego consciousness, to be alive, but for purposive activity it is. We are still looking at it from the side of the body. The more organized aspect of the body is the mind. The still more organized and central core is called the ego. That ego has motivations. Fine. What are they? Eyes are very delighted in seeing beautiful things. Ears are very delighted to hear good music and the pleasing sounds of loving friends. The nose is fond of good aromas. We like the touch of tenderness and affection. Pleasure motivates, and the mind wants to be pleased in so many ways. But mind by itself is incapable of scheming or planning anything. A strong instrument of some kind is necessary. The body by itself has no light. The mind and the ego have no light of their own either. From somewhere light comes, awareness comes. When awareness comes, the mind, ego, and body can work. When it doesn't come, they don't work. At this point, the scientists who uphold the theory of bodily organization are at a loss to discover who organizes, how the organization is effected, or where the ingenious device of putting things together in a meaningful way comes from. That's the mysterious factor. Mystery or the unknown is what we already put on the other side as ariva. Something close to that source of truth, light, intelligence, and understanding has to come. We call it the intellect. In a sense, the ego hires the intellect. There are some illiterate millionaires, but they hire people who have doctorates in economics and other helpful fields to handle their problems for them. Likewise, however foolish the ego is, it can hire the intellect. The intellect comes along and asks, "What do you want?" "I want a sandwich." "That's all you want?" "I hired you only to get me what I want. Don't try to teach me." "Okay, if all you want is a sandwich, there's a restaurant down the street. Just walk down there and hand them some money." No matter what the ego wants, the intellect is willing to help. When it is employed in simple problems with mundane work, after a few days it becomes nostalgic for the realm to which it really belongs, pure knowledge and higher wisdom. It turns that way, and as it turns, it drags the ego along with it to this new world. From the sandwich world, the ego turns to the world of the Supreme. Then it says, "This is so different from all that I knew previously." A kind of shame comes upon it. My God, how could I ask this intellect, which is always with this wonderful light, this blissful knowledge, to do such mean things for me? O intellect, will you please tell me a little more about this world? The intellect assumes the role of a teacher. It says, thus far you have had a wrong identity. You are identifying yourself with the body and things like that. What is wrong with the body? Asks the ego. It's not just the body. The whole thing out of which the body arises has a root aspect. You don't see it because it is lying buried. All the samskaras and vasanas, incipient memories and previous conditionings, are there in the root. They are what feeds you, and so you become blinded. As you are blind, you can only see the world of colorations. But I can show you how you can turn your identity to the original source of everything. Then you don't have to be bound to the world of necessity. Then the ego starts questioning all the values it has been living so far. It says, oh no, I don't want all those little things. The ego has no intelligence of its own, only this kind of borrowed intelligence. If it's with the intellect when it is on the bright side, it feels the calmness, peace, elation, sense of wonder, and great joy of that sphere. And what happens to the mind? It cannot stand alone with the body. So it also comes to the bright side, to the renewed identity with the self. Then the hands say, there's nothing special for us to do. We will also sit peacefully. The legs say, okay, we don't have to run around unnecessarily anymore. It's very peaceful like this. All the body cooperates, and at last the mind, ego, intellect, and the body are all together in the bright camp. Eventually the momentum shifts to the other perspective, and the intellect is weaned away from the side of the pure once again. All the vasanas again act. The ego refocuses on the daily world and thinks, what a folly that I wanted to leave my comfortable home, my spouse and children. All this stuff is so wonderful. It is all I want. The other state of mind was all just phony dreams. These gurus and swamis who come and say all those things. It's good for them, not for me. For me, this is the right thing, to be in my body and live this life. Your attitude swings like the proverbial pendulum. For half the time you are with what is called Arya. I equate that with what the Ishavasya Upanishad calls Vidya. It is the side of the self. Is Narayana Guru asking us to be only on this side and to avoid the side of the body or Anarya? No, not at all. It is here that his revaluation comes as a corrected form of Vedanta. Everyone else, except the ancient rishis, say to leave the body, leave the state of avidya. But the Guru tells us we should know this is the way the whole thing operates. When the body functions have priority, we should see that as how nature operates. When the spiritual insight predominates, we should see that is how the supreme ground of everything lends its light, power, energy, sense of wonder, and truthfulness to infuse everything. These come again and again, as a kind of pulsation, like the alternation of light and dark. Vidya and avidya always operate, but one who knows the secret of both rises above them. One who holds a central position, watching with an evenness of mind, can accept both. You should take this as an invitation to intuitively keep yourself at a neutral zero in orientation. You are not asked to run away from home or commitments. You have a body, and until it drops away, everything pertaining to it is relevant. The complaint here is about the lopsidedness that comes when you exaggerate the value of one side and become blind to the other, as is often the case. You should never be blind. When your bodily needs are to be met, you should still be aware of your spiritual side. And when you are experiencing spiritual ecstasy or joy, don't forget you have a body and that many important laws pertain to it. To have this fully balanced state is true wisdom. In this, you do not give an exaggerated importance to your bodily comforts or your bodily pains. You don't exaggerate spiritual gains, nor do you negatively condemn the spirit as non-factual or dreamy. This brings great peace to your mind. It is a peace that makes you efficient on both sides. You know that someday the body will drop off, but until that time, it is to be treated as an excellent instrument. It is magnificently equipped with both senses and a sensory interpretation system. When all is working harmoniously, you have a healthy mind, a wonderful gift through which the great joy of the Absolute can be lived in a million ways and can be understood and appreciated in a million forms. Then, as an artist, musician, writer, worker, engineer, doctor, housewife, mother, father, whatever your field or role, it all becomes deeply meaningful. You can appreciate it in all its richness. Yet, as you know this is a passing phase, you are no longer threatened by it. Death no longer has its sting. You have already accepted it. If you know that you are hired for only 8 hours a day at your workplace, you don't cry when the bell rings for you to go home. Your life is just like that. When death rings the bell, you just say, it's all over. You know in advance what it's going to mean, so there is no fear. Death, the greatest of terrors, doesn't affect you. Another great fear is that somebody may say something about you behind your back. But if you remember that when you are focused on the body side, everybody's vision is naturally blurred, and they all see only from their own point of view. You can just accept it. You know that those who look at you from above think you are below, and those who look from below think you are above. Those who look from afar think you are very small, and those who look from inside think you are very big. And you just say, that's your view, fine. You don't have to get annoyed. You give complete freedom to everyone to have their own views about you. You are moral, fine. You are immoral, fine. There is a story in Zen Flesh, Zen Bones by Paul Reps about a grain dealer's daughter becoming pregnant. Since she was not married, her father became very angry. He asked her, "Who did this mischief to you?" She wouldn't say. He said, "Come on, tell me, otherwise I will kill you." So she answered, "That Zen master who lives next door, he did it." The father was even more enraged. The Zen master was young and handsome, and everyone had great reverence for him. But the father thought, this mischievous fellow is a black sheep. He took his daughter, went there and said, "Hey man, take her, she's pregnant and you did it." The Zen master answered, "Is that so?" "Yes, that is so." "Fine," he said to the woman. "Okay, you can stay here. I'll go out and beg some food for you." But nobody would give him food because now they thought he was immoral, that he had impregnated this woman. So he became a woodcutter. He worked, brought food, and gave it to her to eat. Finally, the time came for her to give birth. There was great shame and a deep sense of guilt in her, but the Zen master attended on her with great compassion, and the child was born. Afterwards, she went to her father and said, "I did a very bad thing. The Zen master is not the father of my child. He is a very pure man, very compassionate. I cannot bear this guilt." "Then whose child is it?" "It was a fisherman from the market." Her father lamented, "Oh, what a terrible thing I have done to the great Zen master. How can I get any merit in this life? All my merit is gone." He hurried to the Zen master and said, "Sir, you are not the person who fathered that child." The Zen master answered, "Is that so?" "Yeah, I'm taking my daughter back home." "Fine." This is where you have to stand. No matter what happens, no matter what anyone thinks, you can just say, "Is that so?" Fine. To be able to do this, you have to be at a neutral zero, neither on the body side or the other side. This is the most central teaching of the Ishavasya Upanishad. When you know the secret of avidya, you cross over death. When you know the secret of vidya, you enjoy immortality. And the free translation of verse 68 is as follows. Like the presentiment of a snake evoked by a rope, the reality of the ego sense shifts from the body to the self and back again. On one occasion it is experienced as profound, and when it alternates, it is felt as profane. Only one who can discern this knows the truth.